Hi, this is Robert O'Reilly. My name is Gowron. Honor to you and your house. You're listening to Trek FM.
Tea Earl Grey hot.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Earl Grey, Trek FM's dedicated podcast to the next generation. I'm your host, Amy Nelson, and joined with me today are Lee Hutchison and Richard Marquez. Hi, guys.
How you doing, everyone?
Hey, how you doing?
So excited to be recording this, and we are going to launch a new series called Unsung Heroes, where we're going to look at each season and talk about those episodes that get overlooked by the obvious great episodes from each season. And today we're going to cover season 1, which many fans seem to overlook the entire season. Well, we're going to let you know what we think about that type of attitude and thinking. Now, TNG is celebrating its 30-year anniversary, and many fans are committing to a rewatch. However, I've recently seen on Facebook and other areas people questioning if they should skip season 1. What are they thinking? I am most definitely opposed to this idea. What do you guys think?
Yeah, like I'm the same. Like I think Next Generation season 1 is actually a season I watch quite a lot. I think there's some really good episodes in there. There's some shocking episodes in there, but I think it's at times ironically such a fun season to watch. And sometimes when I'm kind of at home and it's a dark winter night, I like nothing more than watching some sort of a bit of a kind of trashy or interesting episode from season 1. I think it's a bit of a throwback to go so far. I lived through all of kind of Next Generation for the most part, and while a lot of like season 3, 4, 5, all that I've watched so many times, sometimes I just think there's something great fun to just be had in watching season 1.
Richard?
I actually am like everyone else. I usually do skip season 1 completely, and going back through these episodes and looking at the list and everything, I forgot a couple of them. And it was actually good catching up because there were pretty good episodes that were in season 1. I mean, I don't see why it was such a bad season, but I mean, there are some good stories in this season. So I'm glad we went back and revisited it.
Agreed. Yeah. And plus, how can you really do a rewatch if you skip over things? It just doesn't make sense. It's not logical. So let's dive into season 1 and tell our listeners why they need to revisit some of these episodes. Now, very excited. Each of us have our top 3 episodes, and we haven't shared them with each other, so we're not sure what each other's going to say. And because it was so difficult to just choose 3, I've got a couple of honorable mentions, as I'm sure you do as well. Yeah? All right. So, Lee, let's start with you. Give us an episode that listeners need to revisit, and why should they?
I decided that I always think with these things, I'm always a panicker. Like Amy knows this from when she brought this up. I always think, well, there's going to be a lot of crossover. We might pick the same episodes, and there's only so many things that people could probably pick. And season 1's a bit sketchy for quality, so we might even pick the same episodes. So I decided to go for episodes of the Next Generation season 1 that are kind of underrated for what's going on behind the scenes. Not so much the episode quality, but an important role that this show plays in kind of the future development or in Star Trek history. So I decided to pick as my first choice Data Lore. Now, I'm going to throw this to you. Why do you think data lore behind the scenes is so important?
Is it a Brent Spiner doing 2 characters in the filming of that, maybe?
Richard.
It gives like a precursor before lore.
What it is that this is the final ever episode of Star Trek that has a teleplay by Gene Roddenberry. Behind the scenes, he's probably making little script notes on episodes to come. This was the last one where he had like a proper title where he contributed to the writing of an episode and it was put in the credits. So data lore, in terms of a historical point of view, that we think of it, we've just come off the 50th anniversary here. Gene Roddenberry is the great bird in the sky that's created Star Trek, and he's contributed so much to the stories and the journey. But data lore in a way is kind of a bookend to that kind of contribution, that this was this kind of big last kind of on-screen contribution to it, the writing of an episode beyond kind of pointers, notes, and then kind of playing some roles in the writing room. So I think it plays a kind of a historical reference to Gene Roddenberry's, contribution to the next generation. That season 1 was quite a tricky, season to produce behind the scenes, and I think data lore, is an important one to revisit. That this is kind of a bit of his kind of last meaningful contribution in a certain way to the production of the next generation.
Wow, that is an excellent reason to include data lore. That's really good. And yeah, it is historical.
I agree. I would have never thought of that.
Leave it to Lee to bring us the behind the scenes.
He's our closer, right? That's for sure.
Yes. So, Richard, you want to give us something on your list? I chose We'll Always Have Paris. And the reason why is because, I guess you could delete it altogether, but I mean, because we really don't see a relationship for Picard and with someone else, really. And this is, as far as I remember, this is the only mention of him even having a relationship or even having a personal life before Starfleet, or I'm sorry, during Starfleet. And it's just, I like this. I've always liked the story, and it's a cute story, or at least I think it is, or at least the love interest. Obviously, the science part is another thing, but yeah. But that's my first one. Lee, comments on We'll Always Have Paris?
Yeah, I mean, I went on a romantic trip to Paris once, so I suppose me and kind of an ex-girlfriend will always have Paris, I guess. So yeah, I think that's an incredibly relatable episode on Star Trek Season 1, and that's something not many people can say. Because I don't know about you, but my bosses have never had little snakes in the back of their necks or anything like that. So if I had to pick an episode of Season 1 of The Next Generation that I could relate to the most, it would probably be that one.
Yes, and I agree this one is a good episode to revisit. It's, again, seeing Picard in a different type of role besides being captain is always a very good thing to see. Yeah. What
about yourself, Amy, then? Kick us off with your list. This is your episode, this is the one you wanted to champion. Here we go. Let's get an insight into Amy Nelson's brain.
Okay, well, my first episode is Haven. Now, this is the one where Troy is arranged to marriage of Wyatt, and so we get Luoxana coming on board, and that's always good for her to annoy Picard and reading his inappropriate thoughts. So that's always a treat to have. Also, I really like it because we really get a good amount of background and culture of Beta Z. And so we're introduced that weddings are nude. And I love the ringing the bell during the meal. I mean, that's gotta be so annoying, but you're just like, oh, that's just what they do. That's how they show gratitude. And so I like that because we do get a little bit more background and culture. I really enjoy Riker and Troy's relationship because you get to learn about their past relationship as well as their present and how things are there. She calls him her Imzadi, and so we learn that word. And how we learn that Riker chose his career over a relationship with her. But yet they still remain close, and you can tell he's brooding in the holodeck because he's gonna lose her and she's gonna get married, and so he definitely still wants her. But what do you do? And for the last thing, we know that Mr. Holmes speaks. Finally, I think this is the only time that we hear Mr. Holmes speaks. He says, "Thank you for the drinks" as they are leaving.
Yeah, sounds like my grandfather on Christmas Day. That's the only thing he'll say.
Oh, that's not good. Yeah. I actually like this episode. It's actually this is also what I also call my my fiance Imzadi as well. Just
Aw.
yeah, but like it's on my it's not. She's actually that's what her contact nickname is, Imzadi. Uh, but like yeah, I love this episode. I mean, there's a lot about this episode that I joke about in my own personal life. Like, I'm about to get married in this year, or I'm about to get married this year, and I joked, "Oh, we could always do a Beta Z ceremony."
Yes, and then I commented, well, just the bride and the groom can go naked.
I've heard excuses in
That
my
was the
lifetime to
compromise.
avoid buying wedding dresses, but this is a new one, Richard.
Yeah. Well, she's also having trouble finding one, so that she likes. So that's another problem. But yeah, I mean, I'm okay with whatever. I can go there with a Starfleet uniform as far as I'm concerned. But looks like it's going to be Tuck, so I'm going to lose that battle. But yeah, I absolutely love this episode. Lee, what about you? What do you think about this?
Bong. I find it's an interesting episode. It's just like kind of very classic Next Generation season 1, where everyone's emotions are pretty like hyper, like Picard's like ultimate crabby, Data's like kind of like pure Pinocchio, Worf is like jumping in on everything, Tasha Yar just like runs to be emotional, and Riker's just like this brooding guy, just like he's just huffing and puffing this whole episode, and it's just like everything's just like at 11 for the emotions and stuff. It's very 80s in that kind of writing and acting approach. And in a way, it's kind of not very Star Trek as well to have characters like so in tune with their emotions to that level. Usually we think of them as pretty kind of cool and relaxed people. And season 1, in particular, this episode, it's not quite. It wasn't very Star Trek in general to have all these emotions so hyper and all that sort of stuff, where we see a lot of that in season 1.
Yeah, that's true. I do like the Star Trek theme. Well, I don't know if it's really a theme or not, but I mean, you have the Torellians coming to Haven, and they are following their fate and meeting their destiny with Wyatt. I mean, it's all based on one girl's dream. How would you do that? Have you done something as crazy and had others like follow you based on a dream that you've had? I find that idea very interesting.
Yeah, interesting, probably. Yeah. I think that could, it's very science fiction-y and all that, I suppose, kind of their approach. And I like how she's got the pencil drawings and all that sort of stuff. It's just, it's a very cheesy episode, and that's kind of its charm, I think.
One of the things I really like about this episode is that Picard gets annoyed, and it's just a running joke throughout the whole entire series, really. And it's just, I mean, it's also good. I'm thinking it's good that we can get away from the technobabble and just do something fun. I mean, like a holiday or something. I don't know. It's just one of those episodes that I really liked. That it's a lot of fun. I probably wouldn't visit it very often because it's not technobabble sort of thing. That's kind of what I like about a lot of the Star Trek episodes, or at least the most the episodes that I really like are either politically driven or technobabble driven. So one of the two. But I mean, this is a good episode. I like it for the humor.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, this is an episode that's doesn't have that technobabble too much, and that it's really saying that there is such a thing as fate and destiny, which sort of goes against what we believe the science and of Trek philosophy to be. So I find it interesting. Anyways, we definitely could talk more about Haven, but Lee, let's get to your second episode.
Yeah, my second episode is the Skin of Evil, and I think that plays an important role in Star Trek. That we've recently just had From There to Here, Trek FM's daily rewatch, where like all these episodes are kind of come together, and there's something that we think of Star Trek. There's like nebula episodes are 10 a penny. We've got long running arcs, but something that's so very rare in Star Trek is the death during the run of a main character. That ultimately, in all these 729 episodes with all these cast members, the only characters that have main characters that have been killed on screen really were Data, Yar, Dax, and Spock. And that's very, very rare. Like, you think of like Game of Thrones, that's probably they've probably killed that many series regulars in the space of a season. Walking Dead, all these things. So the idea of when Star Trek kills a main character is huge. It's absolutely, it's one of these big things. Like, I suppose Trip as well. Should include Trip. My mistake.
Yes.
Before Brandon and the other guys come after me. But I think that seeing Star Trek explore death, especially of a main character, is so rare. So and I think it does it really badly for the most part. I think the Spock death is like the king. The Data death is pretty hokey. The Trip one is atrocious. The Dax one, while the drama of it is amazing, the actual way it's done is a bit silly. So it's something that you can have this little thread that runs through Star Trek, and you could probably do a death marathon if you wanted to. And I think Star Trek just seems to handle killing main regular characters quite clumsily. And I think this is kind of highlighted in The Skin of Evil, that here we go, right, first season, we've now got this character that we're going to kill off. How can we do it? And it's science fiction, you can do anything. You can kill a character any which way you want. So you've got to give fair props to them for killing them off with like a big tar monster. So that's kind of interesting. But I think it's an insight into the season that it's kind of got to at that point where, we have killed off a regular. How are we going to do it? What are going to be the lasting effects of that? And Star Trek Next Generation really didn't touch on Tasha Yar's death very much ever again. It had a little bit here or there, Measure a Man, then they kind of went with it again in kind of yesterday's Enterprise. But it was kind of a symbiotic of the time of like TV, where they just didn't have recurring plots or these things would come back. So Tasha Yar's death is a very interesting kind of relic in season 1 and in Star Trek in general.
Yeah, Skin of Evil is one of those episodes I really didn't like. It's a good episode. Obviously, it needs to happen because obviously we don't see her later on down the road. But we see her obviously yesterday in Enterprise. But I mean, as a main character, I really wish they wouldn't have done that. I mean, I understand what happened. I think it was, what was it? They had. Didn't they have some kind of problem on set or something like that?
That was more Gates McFadden with
that's right.
Denise Crosby. She
Her
just
contract.
wanted to go off and do other things. She was wanting to be in movies, and that maybe didn't really actually pan out as well as she'd hoped. And I think she's tried to get back into Star Trek really ever since. She decided kind of early doors she just didn't want to be tied down to these sorts of things. She was getting brand recognition. She was on Playboy, all these sorts of things, and she believed that she could do better than just playing Tasha Yar each and every week behind the security station.
I think the character would have done tremendously well with everyone. I mean, even though Jennifer freaking hates the character, I love her. But it's definitely a must. You have to have it. And but I mean, to be quite honest, I didn't like the Troy part and all that kind of stuff. So.
But then, an interesting point you make there is that she could have ended up being this loved character, but it's one of the greatest what ifs in Star Trek history that she stayed on. Worf stays at the back of the bridge. Like, her death truly made Worf the amazing character that we ended up getting and loving. And what would that have been like if she'd stayed on the bridge? It's a wonderful what if scenario.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, I agree. I've heard Denise Crosby talk about it at conventions now for 2 years. And yeah, she definitely was looking for something better. And I think that her part was not written well. There's so many times that I'm not fond of the Tasha Yar character because of the way it was written. It didn't seem like she was really head of security. I mean, she was just quick to jump and quick to open her mouth. And you're like, someone on the flagship would not be this rash. And when I first started watching Next Generation, my brother told me about Denise Crosby and how she wanted to go and do bigger and better things. And so that sort of tainted my view of her. It's like, well, she's too good for Next Generation and good luck with that. And then we see, she didn't really do much outside of it. And then you see her hosting the Trekkies little documentary on conventions and stuff, and she's always at every convention and just is enjoying the Trek life. And so I have a softer heart for her now, because she explains, her character was not written well, which I do agree with. She said, you could have just had a cardboard of my legs, because that's really all you saw of me, that they're standing in the back of the bridge. And so I think she has her reasons, and she's, I think, still loved in the community. And so
For sure.
yeah.
No, I absolutely love her. I really do. I really wish we just saw more of her. That's all. Character, nothing else. So.
Yeah, and that she was written better. That's definitely true. So, Skin of Evil, very good. All right, Richard, give us a number 2 pick.
I absolutely love Conspiracy. I love Conspiracy. It's a great episode. It shows that the Federation is obviously not as perfect as we all like to, or I'm sorry, not the Federation. Starfleet is not the perfect organization that we think it is, the peacekeeping organization. And I just love the whole go figure, conspiracy, the whole conspiracy of that someone's trying to take over from the inside out. And it's a wonderful story. I love it. It's fantastic.
You're gonna make Brandon very happy, because he loves this episode.
Does he?
Too.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
I refuse to believe there's people that don't love this episode. It's so much fun.
Well, I guess that's it. We all love it.
Okay.
We all agree for once.
Yes.
All right. How about you, Amy? What's your second?
Okay, my second pick. All right, hold on to your seats. I am choosing Angel 1.
No.
People really do need to watch this episode. It's definitely, I think, maligned. But why do I like it? I like the idea that there is a complete switch of gender roles. I mean, if you think about this, this is airing, I think it was November of 87. And there was definitely a lot of, what should we say, inequities amongst men and women at that time. And so to have this show where you are switching women being the providers and the protectors, and not even just that, but they're larger in their stature. I mean, just complete switch, I find very interesting. And I also like the idea that here is this entire planet where they've chosen to have this united vision, and then Ramsey and his crew come down, crash land, and then they are described as being dangerous and anarchists and outlaws just because they have a different point of view. So how do you view people who have a different vision for what you think your society or your family or your, area is going to look like? And then I really like how Riker says, can you hold back evolution? Like, can any one society stay homogeneous? I find those interesting ideas to think about. And so that is why it is my number 2 pick.
I mean, for me, I think it's awful episode, to put it bluntly, but I think the idea behind it is very interesting. I just think the execution was badly done. I think there's a lot to say about this episode, a lot to discuss, and I think it's an important episode too. I just think the execution of it all undermines what could have been a very fascinating episode, which can be the same for a few episodes in season 1, like Justice, for example. Interesting idea, just poorly executed, and ends up being kind of an episode that ends up being derided by fans.
Sign me up. Where do I sign? No, I actually like this episode. It's like gender roles swapped. I mean, wait. Let me backtrack there. Not really gender roles swapped. It's more like an extreme polarized view of it swapped. It's a what if. It's a what if situation, obviously, or at least that's how I'm seeing it when I watch the episode. It's like, do what I mean. That I've been seeing a lot around the network and around, or I'm sorry, I've been seeing around the internet that this is a sexist episode, and I somewhat agree if I took offense to it, but I don't, because I wouldn't mind being kept like that. That would be awesome. Get a break here and there, but like I mean, it's just like it's one of those episodes where if we were to look at it and let's say someone who doesn't view women as strong at all, I mean, would it be would it be the same thing on the other? Look at it the other way around. I mean, it very well could. I don't know. I mean, but it's one of those episodes that kind of makes you think. It was like, yeah, I could see that happening. I mean, but like. This is also trudging into dark territory too. But I'm not going to go any further than that. But I actually like it mainly because it's not sexist, but I'm just saying it's a swap basically. So that's what I mainly like for it.
Exactly. I mean, you're just seeing a different perspective on how a society is. So Lee, tell me, what do you mean executed? Like the storyline of it all? Like I hear people say that, and I'm not quite sure exactly, because a lot of people will say that about a lot of different episodes that they don't like. Well, it just wasn't executed well. I'm not sure. What does that mean? Like the acting?
Basically what it means is kind of that you can have like an interesting, like, take for example this idea that we've just kind of spoken about there with this idea, like it's a gender swap. The kind of the females are the patriarchs of society, they're the establishment, and the men are kind of castaways and all that sort of stuff. That's a really interesting idea. Then you kind of go, right, how will we make a story about this? And you can execute it. Poor execution can be in a number of ways. You can end up making the story be like pretty terrible, like that you end up making a story where it just doesn't come across as well written, or the ideas just aren't fully formed, or it's badly acted, or there's things in it that completely jar. And I think with Angel One, and I've not watched it in a while, but like my predominant takeaway from it is that the main actress who plays the leader on the planet it's all really good. But the execution kind of falls under where you've got this silly thing with Riker, faffing around in his like kind of, outfit and all these sorts of things, and the band of male characters just seem like a poor man's Mad Max characters, and it's things like that end up just distracting from an interesting kind of point that's been trying to make. And I think like with Justice as well is another interesting example, that you've got this prime directive, and the prime directive forbids you from interfering, and one of your cast members is going to die. That's amazing drama. Where could this go? Oh my god. Then they execute it by going, what it's going to be is that he stepped on the grass. So that undermines your point straight away, because it's laughable. Like, they're going to stand by and let someone die for stepping on the grass. It's things like that where the execution is poorly thought out. Okay. Does that make sense?
All right. Yeah, it does. Excellent. Okay, so we're coming up to our third and final pick. And so, Lee, tell us about yours.
Yeah, I've gone for The Lonely Among Us. An enjoyable episode in its own right. But in terms of, again, it kind of plays an important role in what Star Trek is to come. And I think that with like season 1 and season 2, there's a lot of turnover. A lot of people come on board behind the scenes, whether it's writers, directors, they do maybe a couple of episodes, maybe even they only get one, and that's them jettisoned out. There was so much going on behind the scenes, and it's something we'll touch upon in later episodes. So people kind of staying around and getting longevity out of Star Trek The Next Generation is very difficult to do. And one of the people that achieved that is Cliff Bole, who's kind of probably, if for those eagle-eye watchers at the end of at the start of episodes, will pick him up as who will become a huge recurring director, in-house director for Star Trek. He got his start with Lonely Among Us. He did, you could write off a bunch of episodes here that he's done, and they're probably could be argued as people's favourites. Lonely Among Us, Conspiracy, Best of Both Worlds, Hollow Pursuits, Redemption, Unification, Starship Mine. On Voyager, he did the famous Tuvix, Dark Frontier, Future's End, Q and the Grey. He did a few episodes in Deep Space Nine, Defiant, for example. So this is a guy that was in the coal furnace of season 1 of The Next Generation and managed to stay around and was there through a chunk of Deep Space Nine and there through Voyager as well. He did X-Files episodes, he did TJ Hooker, but the fact that this guy managed to make an impression in season 1 that actually made him be able to stick around. We had Rob Bowman, who was brilliant in season 1 and 2 in directing episodes, but outside of that he only did one more episode of TNG. So Cliff Bowl, his first episode, this is the start of a huge long-term relationship behind the scenes with The Next Generation, and not many people involved in season 1 can really say that.
True. Richard, thoughts on Lonely Among Us?
No, it's a good episode. I like it. I nothing further than what Lee was saying. Yeah.
Well, I'll agree that Cliff Boyle and his name through Star Trek warrants a mention here. But after I watched that episode, I was like, I don't like this episode. So that one is definitely one that's on my don't like list, which is very rare because so far that's the only one that I have for season 1.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
I know.
No.
I guess I came away. I just thought it was boring a little bit, but so I digress.
Oh, I would just put it this way,
all right.
Amy. It's the start of possession episodes in Star Trek, and we're going to see plenty more of them in The Next Generation and beyond. Though I do enjoy this idea that Picard's just floating around in a nebula. That's kind of someone must have been taking some kind of LSD or something behind the scenes that day when he went, I'm going to pitch you this episode. Picard's one with the cloud, man, and they got to beam him in. There's something's going on behind the scenes there.
Yes, I agree with that.
What are you talking about, man?
And there's these spooky aliens, and they look like ferrets, and they're fighting, and Picard is possessed by this thunder and lightning, and the crew are gonna go up against him, but they're no, we gotta respect the law, man. And it's that, if you respect the law, someone will end up being a cloud, man. It's
Could you imagine the CG today?
Oh yeah.
How on that episode? You can make it so rad. Oh, it's hilarious.
Oh. All right, Richard. Well, what about your third pick?
Oh, God. I don't know if I want to do this.
Go for it. I've been waiting.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna drop a live grenade in this, and I'm pretty sure this is gonna drop a live grenade in the Babel conference. So I'm gonna put my flap jacket on.
Army training, didn't you, Richard? You don't drop live grenades. Jesus, what have the American taxpayers spent on you?
Well, of course I don't friggin' do that, but my third episode is not very popular choice, and the only reason why, and before I even say this, just hear me out before you start chastising me on this, but I chose Code of Honor. The reason why is because it's one of those episodes that we see the Prime Directive at its full, or at least to me, it's at its full effect, because easily the Enterprise can go down, swoop in, take everything they need, and be gone, pillage the whole entire planet or whatever for the vaccine that they need it for that some kind of fever that they're trying to get. But it's one of those episodes that Picard shows constraint, and basically, because of the Prime Directive, he subdues all his powers, all his resources to basically form a peace treaty with these people. Now, I get it. This is the racist episode. I get it. I didn't know that until November of last year when Amy told me. And the reason why is because, 24, 25 years of watching Star Trek, I've never seen it that way. Or at least this episode, I've never seen it this way. I mean, going back, if everyone wants to look at it, Earl Grey 124, Earl Grey 140, Standard Orbit 143, and also Mission Log 99, as well as From There to Here 105. All of those episodes talk about Code of Honor, and of course, everyone has the same point of view, which is fine in everything. And just as a social experiment, I also had my brother watch it, a friend of mine watch it, as well as Jennifer watch it. Everyone saw the racial, obviously everyone's black. I get it. Yes, it's a. Oh God, I can't even freaking. I'm losing my breath as I'm talking because I'm not breathing. But everyone saw all the racially charged parts of it. But that's not how I saw it, and that's not how I saw it back then as well, or up until, like I said, November, because I saw it as a story. I don't look for that kind of content, or at least that kind of. I don't look through that lens that, is this racist? I just look for it as a story. And I know I'm going to catch flack for this, but it's just one of those episodes that I really like. I really do. Yeah. So, all right, here we go. Let's hear it.
I'm into kind of two camps. I think it is really, again, it's an interesting story, but it's badly executed. Like the idea that this all-black planet acts and portrays itself that way, and it's plays on kind of these stereotypes, and they embrace the stereotypes in a very undeserved way. Like they go, this is how these kind of black characters will all act and stuff like that. It's bang out of line, really, but it's such trash that I can sometimes watch an episode and I've expressed it before. I'm interested in behind the scenes stuff, historical kind of markers and stuff like that. And I can watch this episode and I'm aware that it is hugely kind of controversial, and rightly so. And I find it quite interesting and enjoyable to watch as a piece of, insight, and sitting there watching it going, why did they make this decision? What was the thinking behind here? Like, how did it get to this point? And I find that interesting to sit and watch and try and work through that kind of the process in my head. And so I find it enjoyable in that respect as a kind of, Trek historian, as it were.
Actually, it was worse. The original way that it was supposed to be done. Supposedly, from what I've read and what I've researched, because I've researched quite a bit in the last couple of days, that the original script called for the guards to be all black, and this to be based on the Japanese culture. So I think that would be worse if it was like Asian, in a sense, bosses or whatever you want to call them, masters or something like that, or whoever controls the land, and then of course their guards are black. And that would make it worse. Now, obviously, either way, it might have been a better move to make them all black. I don't know, but then again, it could have been, because here's the thing is, so also Stargate did an episode, because the same writer that wrote this, and I forgot her name to save my life, wrote the same exact story for Stargate, and instead of making them all black, they're all reptilian. Basically, the same story. And I guess it could have been better if it was if it was an alien species and whatnot. But I like I said, I don't look for that. And I thought it was a great episode when it deals with constraint, especially on someone with lots of technology at their hands. So,
well,
Amy?
And I'm with you, Richard. I didn't see it as racist, and I think I've mentioned this to you before, Lee, when we did From There to Here. It's like Star Trek has a flaw in that every time it introduces a society or a race, they just focus in on one aspect. And so that's what I feel that they've done here. I mean, are all Klingons warriors? No. But we get that from the beginning. Well, this is how they are. And are all Hirogen this, out for the hunt to kill their prey? Well, no, probably not. But that's all we see. So Star Trek has constantly just given one perspective on a race. And so when we look at Code of Honor and the Ligonians, that's all we see. we see them in their one aspect of their culture. And so I was with you, Richard. I didn't see it as racist, and I didn't even think that until I started listening to Trek FM and hearing what other people had to say about it, and I was like, oh, well, I didn't even pick up on that, because they always show just one aspect of a culture or race, and that happens to be what they showed there,
As a boring, nerdy piece of information to complement what Richard said is, like, obviously the writer is Catherine Powers, and I'm a big Stargate fan, and it wasn't lizards, it was actually females. It was like a planet where it was kind of like, it was all women essentially on the planet, and that episode was called Emancipation, and Code of Honor is technically like the 4th episode of The Next Generation if you take Encounter at Farpoint as 2 episodes, and Emancipation was the 4th episode of season 1, and Catherine Powers did that episode too, so there's a kind of a weird historical parallel between the two.
And like I said, it's not something that I see it. I'm not blind to it. It's just I never saw it. And when I did the social experiment, I didn't tell anyone what was going on, well, except for Jennifer. But just to get a background of me, I'm Mexican and Asian. So I'm very used to the idea of racism, but it's just not what I look for when I see an episode. I mean, it's the same thing with Angel One. I didn't see it as sexist. I just saw it as a story, and it may be a little bit over the top on some subjects and whatnot, but that's not how I saw it. It's just I was like, oh yeah, I guess I could see it that way, and I guess it's it depends on the person, and I just think that a lot of Star Trek fans watch. Obviously, we all watch it over and over and over again, and of course, we catch things that we don't necessarily see the first time or the second time. But it's just a story to me, or at least that's how I see it. So yeah. So sorry. All right, your turn, Amy.
Well, I debated on whether I should include this episode because I felt like it is a fan favorite, but I'm going to say it anyways. Arsenal of Freedom. Do you guys like this episode?
Love it.
Yeah. Oh, Richard. Uh-oh.
No, I think it's trash.
So I was talking with one of my friends, and I was like, well, what would you say are the best episodes of season 1? And he mentioned Arsenal of Freedom. And so I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should include it because a lot of people do like it. But I am including it. You do need to go and watch Arsenal of Freedom. Why I chose this, because we get to see Geordi in command. And I've noticed we see Geordi in command quite a bit in season 1. But even better, we get Troy counseling him as she does so very well. So I like it for that. And then the thought that I had with Arsenal of Freedom is there such a thing as too many guns? And I think we can see yes, because all of it destroys the entire population of the planet. And then is there such thing as too much automation and computer programming? And the idea that, this computer or this gun or whatever it is goes back and learns and then comes back to, take it on again. And it just really made me think about, and I don't know, it's really scary, like Google, because I will start typing and it fills in exactly what I was going to type. And that's a little scary. And then even more scarier, like my iPhone, when I get done teaching and I get into my car, my iPhone says 10 minutes till home. And I'm like, how do you know I'm going home? Or even on the days when I go to the gym, it says 24 minutes to the gym. And I'm like, this is crazy. I mean, really, seriously, I'm not joking. I'm sure some of you have had that. But I'm like, is there such a thing as too much? And I'm sort of feeling like, yeah, it's getting a little scary. So that's why I chose Arsenal of Freedom.
Do you know why it does that?
Well, there's some learning program going on in there, and that's scary.
You said you had an iPhone, right?
Yeah.
So on your phone, it actually says what frequent times and it says frequent places, and it actually records what time you usually go to the gym, what time you usually go home, what days, and all that kind of stuff. And you can just turn it off.
See, it's technology learning our patterns out to destroy us.
Yep.
Arsenal of freedom right there.
Judgment Day.
Yes.
That's how I'm saying it. So everything you just said is like it's not about arsenal, or it's not about weapons. It's not about it's technology, but it's the birth of AI, and we're all gonna die.
So Lee, you like Arsenal of Freedom?
Yeah, it was one of my honourable mentions. I think, but I picked it for a different reason, and it was the first time we ever see a black captain in the Next Generation. And I think it's a fascinating kind of historical landmark. We've got this black actor, LeVar Burton, kind of at that point, obviously reading Rainbow and his role in Roots, where he played a slave, and to kind of that sums up brilliantly the kind of the Roddenberry vision of kind of a colorblind future. And while we talk about code of honor and potentially it's a very vile approach to race, this is kind of the opposite in the respect that it's the issue that LaForge has is that he feels he's too young to be captain. You know, he's dealing with a lot, he's processing all these things, and it's never once that it's about his race. And that's what Star Trek is. It's colorblind. Sisko never doubts that he can be a good captain or his decisions based on his race. The LaForge becomes captain, and all he worries about is maybe he's just too young. And it's nothing that's never blinked out or made a big deal that this is a black guy that's sitting in the captain's seat of the Enterprise. It's just the fact that this guy's young, and I think that's a historical moment that goes under the radar.
Agreed. Richard?
I got really nothing. I mean, it's just one of those episodes that I mean, I didn't think about LaForge being a captain, being the first black person as a captain, or at least on the Enterprise. It is, but like, it's one of those episodes that I could just do without. When you said that, before we did this show, I was like, Arsenal of Freedom. Like it wasn't the episode I was thinking of, because I was thinking of Conspiracy was the episode, and when I watched it again, I was like, oh man, this is the episode that I absolutely thought it was quirky. And yes, thinking of it as in the eyes of like AI, the birth of AI and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's a scary moment. Definitely, it's something that we could look at as a very potentially dangerous point in even our history right now. With because I think Stephen Hawking has warned us several times about giving birth to AI if it hasn't already happened already. So yeah, Skynet.
I just watched, since we're talking about AI, I just watched Ex
Machina.
Machina.
Yes.
Woo! A little scary right there. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a scary movie.
That was a good thriller. Enjoyed that a lot.
Yep.
All right. Well, those are three. So Lee, you'd mentioned Arsenal of Freedom was on your honorable. So give us what was your other
my other one was something I echoed a bit with Cliff Bowl, but Where No Man Has Gone Before kick-started really essentially Rob Bowman's directing career. He would direct some of the best episodes of The Next Generation in the first two seasons. Heart of Glory, Elementary, Dear Data, Q-Who, Manhunt, a lot of these amazing episodes in the kind of the first couple of seasons of The Next Generation, and he would go on to be like the mainstay in the X-Files. He was kind of essentially the director in residence there, and would go on to do the X-Files movie. So yeah, Rob Bowman kind of kickstarting his career, and I think he brings a directing style that made The Next Generation seem not so televisual, and I really appreciate that in those first few seasons when the quality on the screen and behind the scenes was very televisual at times and very dated. Rob Bowman was a fresh perspective.
Very good. Richard, your honorable mentions?
I only actually had one other, and that was The Battle. Mainly for the history behind. I mean, he has a history within Starfleet. We don't really know who he is throughout, or at least in this first season, we really don't. I mean, he's a new character that apparently has been through a lot and is a hard ass. So we see his relationship with Gabrielle, and We Will Always Have Paris, but really that's really all we see about him. So I like this episode mainly because we get some kind of background. He's obviously a military military leader. I guess it was a surprise attack. So yeah. I mean, that's what I mainly love about this episode. That was the only one because I figured no one else was going to choose Code of Honor. And yeah.
Okay. Well, my 2 honorable mentions are 11001001. And I think it's just a really fun, good Clue episode. And of course, we get introduced to Minuet, who I love. She's fabulous. And sort of the Binars, it's interesting. Again, we're getting this idea of combining technology with organic life, and they do it in a different way than the Borg do. But it's still that idea of, their advanced technology and the combination of an entire world. I like that. Plus, as a math teacher, it's always fun to use binary. And my second choice, honorable mention, is Hide and Q. And I just like the idea, although I don't like the weird animal shapes that they get sent to, but the idea of this, using this unlimited power. And what would you do? And we see what Riker does, and we get to see what Riker thinks everyone else's desires are. And so for that, I find it interesting.
I do have one question for you guys. Do you think in Hide and Q, so since Tasha was put into the penalty box early, do you think that was they were already starting to get rid of Tasha Yar and start putting Worf in there as a security chief because how fast he was running and then coming back and basically saying put down your weapons sort of thing when they were trying to test out their phasers?
No, not really. I think it's a pretty good kind of representation of what Worf was like as a character, and we've seen Tasha Yar get quite emotional about kind of a few issues and stuff. So I think it's pretty consistent with what we were kind of getting from kind of straight away from the Next Generation with those characters.
And it is 13 episodes before Skin of Evil, so I'm not sure if they were
really?
thinking.
Oh,
yeah.
shit.
No, I wouldn't have thought so at that stage.
Well, Season 1 Unsung Heroes is not the only thing we've been talking about here on the network. Here's a quick look at what you might have missed elsewhere on Trek FM.
Previously on Trek.fm, Warp 5.
Even though we lost tons of money, we were like, phew. Now we can stop and think.
Writer strikes are funny things. Sometimes you get season 7 of 24, and sometimes you get Shades of Grey.
I knew you were going to say that.
Literary Treks.
And again, that's the great thing about these novels is like, it can change your perception and look at these episodes and these movies in a totally different way. And I just love, it's not there to fix mistakes, but it does.
Meta Treks.
How do they know for sure that they're not the ones who are going to be thrown back and their duplicates end up making it back to deep space?
Hey,
how can they know for sure?
That's a very good question.
They glossed over that big time in this episode.
Yeah, I think if I'm Benjamin Sisko, I would want to make sure that's clear.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
You can listen to every show on the network at Trek.fm with links for iTunes, streaming services, and a direct download link. This episode of Earl Grey is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 150,000 titles for iPhone, iPod, iPad, Kindle, Android, Windows Phone, plus Mac or PC. To get a free audiobook of your choice, visit audibletrial.com/TrekFM. Thank you, Audible, for supporting Earl Grey and Trek FM. If you are a weekly listener and would like to directly help Earl Grey, please consider becoming a patron of Trek FM. At patreon.com/TrekFM, you can choose a pledge level. At $5 gets you entrance into our patron zone. And this is where you get exclusive content and access to our early releases of our podcasts. At the $15 a month, you get to participate in our monthly roundtable discussions with other patrons and networks. and hobnobbing with the hosts. Now, Lee and I just recorded one earlier and had a very good time at our roundtables. And at the $25 a month, you get associate producer credits for any podcast that you choose here on the network. We would like to take this moment to thank our current Patreon associate producer, Michael Huter. Thank you for supporting Earl Grey. Another way to help out the network and get cool stuff is to visit Redbubble at redbubble.com/shop/TrekFM. You can find amazing designs for shirts, pillows, phone cases, and more. And with each purchase, a portion of the sales go to Trek FM. Connect with other Trek FM listeners on our Facebook discussion group called the Babel Conference, found through Facebook, searching Babel, Babel, or you can like us on facebook.com/TrekFM page for our show updates and announcement. The network is also on Twitter at TrekFM. If you would like to contact Lee, Richard, or myself, that's Amy, visit trek.fm/contact to send us a subspace message or find us on social media. So, Richard, where can people find you and tell you that Code of Honor is definitely racist?
Well, they cannot find me on the Babel Conference on Facebook, and they cannot find me on Twitter at xransom. No. No, they can find me on the Babel Conference. They could also find me on Twitter, and my handle is xransom. And I would love to hear your views. Bring it on.
Bring it on. All right, Lee, and where can they find you to talk back behind the scenes?
Yeah, you can find me to talk behind the scenes at Lee_Nostromo on Twitter. You can find me at Star Trek VHS on Twitter. We've just recently got a little collaboration going on with TrekCore just now, where you'll find all my VHS artwork covers popping up there. I think today the movies and the animated series went up, so look out for the Next Generation and Voyager in the near future. You can find me on the Filibuster podcast on the Nerd Party Network. Just this week, me, Matt Hansen, and Tristan O'Dell released a Star Trek Beyond commentary podcast. You can check that out. And I'm also part of the team on the Glasgow is Green podcast, a football podcast all about Celtic Football Club. So I'm sure that'll appeal to 0.09% of Star Trek fans that listen to this. If there's a Venn diagram, there would be next to no crossover. There'd just be me. And obviously you can find me on the Babel Conference.
You do so much. Thank you. Well, you can find me on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, but my favorite place is on the Babel Conference. So join us next week for another cup of Earl Grey.
The line must be drawn here.
Today is my day to die.
Great joy and gratitude.